I've been thinking about Spanish customer service this week. Actually, I've been thinking about Spanish customer service for many years. A lot of people these days are moving to Spain and they're not really prepared for the cultural differences. Customer service is one of the big cultural differences, and today we're going to talk about what you can expect from customer service in Spain. Because if you haven't been around for too long, you might have some expectations about politeness in customer service that just aren't going to be met by your average Spanish waiter or shop assistant. Hey everybody, it's Daniel. Welcome back to Spain to Go, the best podcast in the entire multiverse for all things Spain. This is episode 103, and I think it is completely unfair to go to a country and judge the character of its people by your interactions with waiters and shop assistants, but I'm pretty sure we all do it. I was in Japan last year, and I'm pretty sure I didn't have any real interactions with Japanese people outside of customer service interactions. So I've done a lot of reading about Japan throughout the years, but now my impression of real Japanese people is largely a product of those interactions. Anyway, here in Spain, it's probably about the same thing. You go to the bar outside your hotel for some patatas bravas, and if the guy behind the bar isn't as friendly as someone back home, you might just draw some conclusions. So that is the topic of the day. Spanish customer service, comercio de proximidad, which is like your small neighborhood shops, gentrification, banking nightmares, and much more. First, a little story. A couple of weeks ago, I went to the doctor's office. Really, I just wanted to see if my new private insurance would get me into the clinic in my neighborhood. I've used the public health system, but the private insurance that I pay 14 euros a month for must be good for something. Let's find out what. Anyway, I walked into the clinic just to try it out, and less than a minute later was whisked into a little room where a skinny and wrinkled 72-year-old man sat behind a desk. Dr. Garcia, according to the nameplate. And Dr. Garcia just stared at me. No buenas tardes, no nothing. He just looked at me. I told him what I was there for, just a blood test to make sure everything's working well on the inside. I told him I'm generally healthy despite the inexorable march towards decrepitude that is the lot of any man in his 40s. And no response. After I finished talking, he silently reached for a notepad and wrote a long, indecipherable paragraph on it in tiny block caps. The writing takes several minutes, silence the whole time. Finally, he gives me the paper and speaks. Come back tomorrow, fasted, any time from 8 to 11 in the morning. And with that, I'm done. No hasta luego, no nothing. So what's the deal with Spanish customer service? I guess I should say that I might have this effect on people because they see my blue eyes and red beard and assume they're going to have to speak English with me. Sometimes I speak quite a bit of Spanish to people and they still do not believe I really speak Spanish. Maybe they think I'm just learning. But I've had many conversations at this point where I speak Spanish, the person responds in English, and we just keep doing this because apparently my appearance is so non-Spanish that they think I can't possibly know enough Spanish to continue. Fine. That's fine. In fact, I've been speaking Spanish on the daily for more than 2 decades now, but total strangers don't know that. And maybe the terror of having to confront their lifelong failure to learn more than a few words of a foreign language makes them freeze up and go silent. Maybe it's not Spanish customer service that's the problem. Maybe it's that people look at me and think they won't be able to communicate. Or maybe people in Spain just aren't too friendly with strangers. I know there's a stereotype out there about Spanish people being so open and friendly. Personally, I don't buy it. Maybe if you're here as a tourist and you meet some people at a nightclub and it seems like you're friends from the get-go, you could develop that idea. But I've been around for a while and I'm still not convinced. I'm not saying that Spanish people are assholes or anything. It's just that sometimes it takes them a while to open up to people from abroad. And if your Spanish is slower or more awkward than they're used to, they might not make a huge effort to understand you. Here's another customer service anecdote. Banco Santander spent half the spring remodeling its office down the street. It was closed for a while, and I hadn't really needed to go in anyway. When I finally did, I found that the customer service area had been replaced by a waiting room with a coffee machine and those hard modern couches in odd geometric shapes. Totally uncomfortable, but totally modern. It looked more like a hotel lobby than a branch office. At the door, there's now an iPad where you have to enter your name, national ID number, and reason for visit in order to get a number. And now there's an old woman from the barrio who's obviously never used an iPad before, struggling to get through the whole thing. In other words, it looks like they've gotten rid of standing in line at the window, and instead we're standing in line at an iPad. And Grandma here is having trouble with the enter key. I help her out, she gets her number, and I get mine. I sit on the hard and oddly shaped couch for a few minutes until it becomes obvious there's nobody actually working here. They've just done a clever job of hiding tellers in cubicles, where they do nothing, and then they make the customers talk to an iPad about it. Finally, after 15 minutes of waiting, I get up and go to another bank. My account at CaixaBank is basically dead, but I just need to pay the fees for my Visa renewal, so it's no biggie. The reason why I opened the account at CaixaBank is that back in the day, they were the only bank that would work with my 9-digit passport number. Other banks had refused, 8 digits or no deal. They'd try to put their computer systems just weren't adapted for opening accounts for a wide variety of foreigners. I guess they didn't get a lot of people from the US back in those days. Technically, I was only in Spain at that point because I had overstayed my tourist visa, so I'm surprised any bank was prepared to work with me at all. I'm glad CaixaBank, or La Caixa, as it was called before the Great Recession, did. Still, the woman who opened my account had to call her manager to figure out what to do with my single last name. Spanish people have 2 last names, I have 1. And the correct answer, apparently, is just to put a period or an asterisk in the second last name field on the computer. As long as the computer's happy, everyone else is happy. They don't really think my last name is an asterisk. It just seems that the computer system isn't prepared for people with only 1 last name. This is a big enough problem among immigrants here in Spain that I've been interviewed by El País about it. The article is called John Smith No Tengo, which is a pretty good joke. And actually the whole situation with naming conventions is kind of hilarious. The other day I saw something on Facebook where a woman was wondering how to change her name back to her maiden name because here in Spain, a husband and wife having the same last name is just confusing to people. Wives do not take their husbands' last names. It's just a matter of fact that a woman has a different last name than her husband. If you're a foreigner with only 1 last name and you get Spanish nationality, they will ask you to choose a second last name when they issue you a passport. You will officially, in Spain, have 2 last names, and therefore have a different name on your Spanish passport than on your US or other passport. Probably. Like I said, it's complicated. Go back to episode 100 if you would like to hear about my recent adventure with Spanish nationality. It's quite a story, still in progress. Anyway, the naming conventions are sort of a problem. Another thing that happens to me is that I have to often clarify that my middle name is not one of my last names. They see my name Daniel, and they don't know what to do with the middle name. If it's a compound first name along the lines of Billy Joe, or if it's my first of 2 last names. So, back at the bank, I'm thinking, the reason why I stopped going to CaixaBank is because I moved out of that neighborhood. But every time I tried to go to a branch office near my new house, they told me to go to my office, the one where I originally opened the account several years ago. This institution apparently has been voted best bank in Spain multiple times, but they're working under the assumption that it's still the 1940s and people spend their whole lives living on the same street. Back in the day when men got married, they would buy the flat next door to mom's house so they could go over for the merienda every afternoon, chocolate con churros, of course, and then drag their wives to paella at mom's house every Sunday. So logically, the head of the bank office in your neighborhood knows you, he knows the local fishmonger, he knows the fishmonger's grandchildren, They've all been hanging out at the same corner bar every afternoon for 35 years, and nobody has any problem with a national bank refusing to serve them outside the neighborhood where they were born. Today at CaixaBank, there's a big guy in a suit at the door. He takes my ID card, puts it into his computer, and then tells me I should go to my office across town. I insist. I tell them that I haven't been to that branch in 7 years, and if they're truly the best bank in Spain, they should at this point be able to deal with the fact that modern European nations have more than one neighborhood. Reluctantly, he agrees to let me in and passes me off to a woman who fails for 20 minutes to do what could be done in one. I just have to pay the 15 euros or whatever to get a new ID card. It's not technically that hard. But after much heavy sighing, she gives up and sends me on my way. Come back in 8 to 10 days, she says. The system should be working by then. Oh well, the Banco Sabadell in my neighborhood always works. You just have to stand in line behind all the retired people. I will say at this point that nobody in Spain is happy with their bank and nobody is happy with their electrical company. It's a very normal thing that these sorts of companies are just annoying and difficult to work with. And I'm sure someone out there is listening and getting angry at me for my comments about Spanish people and their customer service. Did I really have the nerve to say that the Spanish people are so open and friendly line is just something we're all forced to say from time to time, but we may not believe? I guess I did say that. And hopefully you're still with me, because I will say that people are very decent once they get to know you. Back in my old neighborhood, my butcher and baker knew me by name. My fishmonger would ask me about U.S. politics while he was gutting my sardines. The girl who made my coffee in the mornings got quite friendly after I had come by about 5 days in a row. My constantly breaking flat back in Madrid was visited by a long line of polite and highly competent repairmen, and I've even been treated very well by the police at Aluche, who renew our identity cards, and more recently at Aluche's Barcelona equivalent, the large police station on Rambla de Guipúzcoa. But still, customer service here in Spain can be kind of annoying. Let's talk about gentrification and your neighborhood shops, because as I've suggested already in this article, a lot of businesses in Spanish towns and cities are working on a system called Comercio de Proximidad. That's just nearby commerce. In other words, you go to the fishmonger because he's right down the street. You've been doing this for decades. There aren't a lot of other options, so nobody's doing marketing or advertising, because it's not like you're going to go across town to buy fish. Proximity is 90% of the business model in this case. Location, location, location. And of course, it's not all bad. The people in the shops might just need to see you a few times before they realize you really live here. You're not just some tourist who's passing through. Speaking of tourists, I'll have more to say about this topic soon, because some people are complaining that the more central neighborhoods of Madrid and Barcelona are turning into theme parks more than cities. They're losing their small neighborhood shops and opening up brunch places and convenience stores. It's part of the larger gentrification issue, and it's also affected by the social changes in Spain over the last few decades. Your local butcher, baker, and fishmonger are sort of depending on housewives to go out and buy fresh meat and produce every morning. These days, the newer generations don't make a big production out of cooking. They also work all day, so they want to do all their shopping at Mercadona on Saturday morning. Or, better yet, just get a burger delivered to their doorstep by Glovo. These are big topics, and I'll be talking more about them soon. In the meantime, please go support your local fishmonger. Just be aware that he might need to get to know you a little bit before he's going to be open and friendly. That's all I've got for today. Hope you enjoyed this brief episode. Head over to expatmadrid.com/donate to support the cause here. I appreciate it. You can donate anything from €3 on up to however much you want. expatmadrid.com/donate. That just takes you to a donation page. I've got a few new things up there on the blog at expatmadrid.com. I've got a list of the best Spanish podcasts for 2025. That also includes some YouTubers who are doing interesting things. You could check out, for example, the Making of Madrid podcast with Felicity Hughes. I've been on that one, interviewed on that one, but she also does topics that I would never consider worthy of an episode, which is why it's so interesting. With podcasts and videos about Spain, it's very easy to go and talk about the top 10 tapas bars or whatever. Not too many people are doing in-depth stuff. I try to do in-depth reporting on Spanish life here on Spain to Go. Felicity over at The Making of Madrid does a very good job of what she's doing. She does a lot of research. So check that out. Also, I've updated my article about Holy Week in Spain. Technically, the article is called Holy Week in Madrid, I think, but, it is a thing that happens all over Spain. There's these processions, there's some typical foods, like typical desserts, torrijas. There's Holy Week vocabulary. If you're in a smaller city, especially in Andalusia, the Holy Week is probably a bigger deal than it is up here in Barcelona, for example. I enjoy it. The processions are very slow and very long, but you can hang out for half an hour and then go do something else. Anyway, the article Holy Week in Madrid talks about some of the culture behind Holy Week. It gives a lot of vocabulary that's specific to Holy Week if you want to learn some Spanish. Speaking of learning Spanish, learn Spanish with Daniel. Go to YouTube and type in Learn Spanish with Daniel. I've got a couple of new videos up there. This week I recorded a video about uses of the verb poder, which is to be able to do something. It's like can. So go over to Learn Spanish with Daniel, watch some Spanish videos. All the episodes of the podcast are also up there on YouTube if you want to listen on YouTube. Sometimes that's more convenient for various reasons. You could go to Amazon and buy my books. If you are listening to this in English, I can guarantee that you do not need my books, but maybe you have some Spanish-speaking friends who want to learn English, and you could give them a copy of one of my books, or several copies of several of my books. I've got a lot of things up there. Just put my name into Amazon.com or the Amazon store nearest to you. Feel free to follow me on Instagram. I'm on Instagram at Daniel Welsh, just my name as it is spelled normally. I started doing stuff online a long time ago, and I was the only Daniel Welsh out there doing a lot of online stuff under my own name. These days, there's several German guys with the same name who are out there. Hello to any other Daniel Welsh that might be listening to this. I'm still the number one Daniel Welsh globally, of course, but that could change. However, Instagram.com/Daniel Welsh, WELSCH, is me, Daniel from Arizona who now lives in Spain. That's all I've got for today. Thank you once again for listening, and talk to you soon. Hasta la próxima.